What's the number one thing that you've seen in the news last week?
Well, the hot news for me has been the Kasisto acquisition. I mean, Tim, how come I didn't get a heads up on this?
600% year-over-year increase of putting financial workloads in an agentic context. But at the same time, we don't see 600% increase in governance clarity or governance properties or even the compliance framework, for Christ's sake. Let's start there.
The whole AI thing has gone a little bit stir crazy.
I think in 6 months, it's probably all going to be commoditized. Whether you're using Quen or Kimi or indeed Opus 4.8 or you're using Codex, meaning it is already happening with commoditization. There's just no way around it, is my take.
Elements of the board have to be AI agents themselves, right? Maybe my days are numbered.
All right, welcome back everyone to a new weekly digest of Banking Reinvented. Your host Tim Rutten here, together with Dharmesh Mistry. Dharmesh, good to see you again, man.
Good to see you, and nice that the weather has cooled down a bit. But the news has been hot.
It has been very hot. So contrary to previous episodes where we're talking about the heat wave, which was hitting Western Europe, we now see other topics in the news again that supposedly are a little bit more, let's say, hot. So maybe to get us kicked off, Dharmesh, what's the number one thing that you've seen in the news last week?
Well, the hot news for me has been the Kasisto acquisition. I mean, Tim, how come I didn't get a heads up on this? Because I think, look, firstly, congratulations, because Kasisto is a leader in conversational AI across banking, and B, because it just shows that you understand what the full architecture actually is. This isn't just about behind the scenes AI, but also the interface, the new interface to customers. So I'm really pleased for you.
Thank you. Just to share a few nuggets on it. The whole thesis behind this, I would say largely in the full industry, is that originally also where Kasisto comes from is conversational chat or chatbots that basically have a way to have a dialogue with a customer, a consumer, or maybe a member of a credit union, and then basically give a response. Okay, so there's a response, but nothing really happens in terms of work. And that's really where the past 2 to 3 years have shaped the industry, and also where does the actual intent of the customer get captured? And how does it then get executed, right? So from customer intent, to understanding what that customer wants to achieve, to actually executing the work. And the work could very well be blocking a card, maybe introducing a particular product to this individual because it fits the intent that they have. And for the majority, that's basically the customer resolution loop where with the technology that we now have in front of us, Agentic AI, LLMs, Gen AI, well combined with proper guardrails in the context of banks that are heavily regulated entities, that's exactly what Kasisto has been building for 10 years, and which is also why we're so pleased to bring them into the Backbase family, which means they're immediately part of the AI native banking OS vision, where this is basically the surface where the conversation happens with the customer. I think that the market was quite interested in this move last week.
Yeah, I don't see anyone doing anything similar at all. It's all either at the chatbot end or, some people now talking about agentic OSs, at the back end, but nobody's really brought it all together. And that's, this is kind of like the missing piece in that story.
I think the other part is, I think we're all collectively trying to figure out what does the new interface look like. It's also what Aurelie L'Hostis released a blog on. She's one of the senior analysts at Forrester. And she basically made exactly that statement, right? Salesforce acquiring FinAI, which is more of a horizontal conversational type of infrastructure. ServiceNow also made its acquisition, the exact same move, but then more horizontal. Backbase acquired Kasisto, very specific, highly verticalized and specific to banking, where there's already dozens of banks on that technology running their agentic capabilities and their conversational capabilities. She basically frames that as an industry trend to find the new front door. And that's exactly what the whole thesis is about. What is the new front door? I think right now, many of us are very comfortable talking to ChatGPT, to Claude, to Gemini, what have you. So in a way, it's already getting ingrained into also the consumer population that this is a way to interact with these models and get work done.
Yeah. I mean, look, I was a fan of the chatbots for quite some time. I also published my own conversational framework in, I think, about 2016, pre the Gen AI stuff. But the challenge that I was trying to solve at that point was that channel solutions had almost 1,000 function points. How can you pack that into a set of menus? Well, you can't really. And then you get this conflict of like, oh, is the app too feature rich, especially for mobile, right? So it really does open up the front door for a full conversation with the bank, right? When you provide such an interface, but it also does the same, for internal staff. And as staff move around from bank to bank, they're having to learn new terminology, etc., as well, right? And this kind of platform bridges that gap and allows people to hit the ground running in effect, right? So, I mean, I think it solves so many problems, and it has to be the interface of the future. I mean, it's been our interface for human to human interaction for, forever and a day. So for me, is a fairly natural course of direction.
Yeah, there's much more to come. I can tell you already. I think the industry is now the industry is finding its way now. Like, what's the next logical frontier? And this is clearly the move that we are at least putting forward. And I think the signal is very positive on the move. Hey, then moving on, which is related to this news article that was quite well covered last week, is the governance piece, right? So, okay, I think for the majority, we know what the tech can do, and many consumers, but also banking executives, are getting a little bit more comfortable with the power that it has. But the real challenge is really the governance. So, how do you make sure that this is safe, secure, compliant, regulatory signed off? Yes, no. Um, and there's more conversation happening. At least that's what I'm picking up on, Dharmesh. What are you seeing?
I am seeing this. Incidentally, a good friend of mine at the FCA, Colin Payne, always says to me, "We don't want to be first. We want to get it done right first." We want. It's not about like who's the fastest and quickest. It's who's the safest and generates the most trust. And I think that is the roll call for banks, is that you know um, don't rush out these projects on an insular basis just because the new models are coming and your competitors are launching. Make sure whatever you launch, whether it's internal or external, right, stands up on its own 2 feet. It's fully explainable, it's fully auditable, and has a set of guardrails to make sure it works within the parameters that you want it to work within. I mean, I think um, we're way past the experimental stage and the learning phase. We're now, the first thing that an organization needs to do is get its architecture mapped out and make sure that every implementation around AI has the governance in place, right? So I think this is the right way for banks to go.
Yeah. So that's basically also connecting to the data point here, which is 600% year over year increase of putting financial workloads in an agentic context. So that drive is there, and that adoption is going to be there for sure. There's a reason why Anthropic, but I believe also OpenAI will soon make the move. We're going onto the financial vertical because there's so much manual work and data-driven work where we can really have a big impact. But at the same time, we don't see 600% increase in governance clarity or governance
No.
processes or even the compliance framework. For Christ's sake, let's start there. So maybe to unpack that a little bit, Dharmesh, have you already picked up on bigger efforts, perhaps with your friend Colin Payne, on okay, what's the regulatory body or framework that we're going to start proposing, to start understanding where does the accountability sit and how do we bring this to life more universally?
I mean, I think all of this varies by jurisdiction, right? So we see, some activity in the US with the OCC. The FCA are starting to bring some into the UK, and Europe has already done some around AI. One of the key things that they have said is that we can't be dependent on models. And when Fable was kind of banned from our access, it kind of highlighted the point that we cannot be dependent on a non-sovereign AI anymore. So it's almost like Dora for AI, that we can't be dependent on a single vendor. And again, I can't see how banks can reply to that overnight. And maybe it's time to take a step back and just look at the overall architecture, even if the regulations aren't forcing the right kind of architecture and governance frameworks in place. I think it's down to a bank to kind of like preempt some of this stuff themselves, because I think the regulators are moving, but this space is moving so quickly, and it's moving at speed, not human speed, right? So we tend to move a lot slower, um, but there's no reason why we should try to stay up all the time. I think it pays well in the longer term to sit back, look at the overall architecture, look at where the technology is going, and saying, well, okay, now what's the framework that spans my enterprise? How do I keep my customers safe? How do I make sure that what we do is fully explainable, that there are audit trails, that we won't get into trouble with the implementations either internally or externally, right?
Yeah.
Because the whole AI thing has gone a little bit stir crazy. It's kind of like impacting everyone all at the same time everywhere. And I think it's almost like a bit of a gold rush, but at the same time, I think, look, don't get caught out, because those people that fail are going to get burnt very badly. So it's
Yeah.
better to take a bit of caution and go back to Colin, to do it right.
I think that makes a lot of sense to do it right, and maybe even tread carefully, don't speed up too much. While at the same time, you see little steps. For instance, the OCC is now requiring banks to um, have an explainable way in how AI is helping them do credit adjudication, and making sure that the right calls are made fairly without discrimination and so forth, basically upholding the regular compliance framework. At the same time, to your point, it's like a breakneck speed. Now we have the whole Mythos Fable thing. Next week it's 5.6. The week after it's something from China, like whatever. There will always be this upheaval in this domain, is my expectation. And maybe the contrarian view, curious to hear your thoughts here, Dharmesh. I think in 6 months, it's probably all going to be commoditized, because the next more open source, open weighted model will probably get to Mythos quality. If it's not in 6 months, it's going to be in 12. It's going to happen, which means my expectation is that these LLMs will eventually become so commoditized that that's not the differentiator anymore for the frontier labs. And that's why they're trying to reel it in, partially for sovereignty and security reasons, but also to not actually make it available so it cannot be consumed by other, entities who will then bring it into their models and release it open source overnight. Right? I think it's like the
Oh,
door is
that's an
almost
interesting
open.
perspective. I like
Yeah.
that.
What do you think?
No, and I like it. I like it. I hadn't really kind of thought of it that way. Um, well, obviously, I see this pace of increase, but I haven't really thought about it as a way of safeguarding, and then the eventual commoditization. I think the problem has been is that we've seen so much improvement. We almost kind of expect it now, that this is a continuous cycle. Um,
Well,
but how
that's
long
my
can it
point.
carry
It is.
on improving?
Yeah, but it is exactly that, right? I recall doing my first vibe coding session a year ago. It was quite okay, and by now it's actually incredibly okay. Like it's
Yeah.
ridiculously strong in what it can generate and basically evaluate. And there's a whole pipeline mechanism to it, which is almost native to any LLM at this moment in time, whether you're using Quen or Kimi or indeed um, Opus 4.8, or you're using Codex. Meaning it is already happening, that commoditization. It literally is already there, but there's still a bit of a leg up for the frontier labs that are well funded and have basically been training those new models that are superior to the benchmark today. But just take it to the extreme, like in economics, take it to the extreme in 6 or 12 months, they will also be there. There's just no
But
way around it, is my take.
do you think that some of the expectations have increased as well, though, at the same time? Because I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were frustrated that Google could only generate 15 seconds of video. Why not a whole movie? And I'm like, whoa,
Well, they can.
15 seconds of realistic video is like amazing.
Yeah. No, they already can. So that's not the thing. They're just throttling and limiting their spend on however this is being consumed. But the tech is already there, Dharmesh. There's full videos being generated with a combination of C dance, Banana Pro, like all these different Nano Banana, like all these different things coming together. There's a few Reddit threads out there where there's real creatives that are doing this deep work where all of these technologies come together. It's insane. And let's say they are 6 to 12 months ahead of the market by stitching it all together and showing what the potential is, literally. That also certainly holds true in engineering. It will also hold true in other domains where it will have an impact already or very soon. So what I'm trying to share is that I think we're just seeing a bit of a hiccup delay. There's security challenges or sovereignty challenges, but there's also just the raw power of what's getting to market very soon. And someone is going to be willing to open the door to those
Yeah.
models.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
that's just where I'm currently in my thinking.
it's interesting. I mean, it brings me on to another story about this neobank current raising 80 million, right? And they say they're going to spend it on, or they spent a lot of it on building a core, and they'll extend it and rolling out AI, right? But my problem with this story is that, like, is core anymore, right? It seems to me with everything that we're doing around agentic and AI, is that um, the focus very much is about the front end, and it's no longer so much about the products. Nobody's discussing what great innovations are coming out of products because they aren't, right? There isn't, like nobody's made an announcement that, oh, look, we're making so much more margin out of the products now, or we're selling so much more because of AI. None of those headlines have hit the road, right? So my question is core anymore, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what's your view on that?
Well, first of all, I know Stuart Sopp personally, the founder and CEO of Current, incredible operator. So saying hi. Well, at the same time, I struggle with the number and allocating that just to the AI transformational work that needs to happen. If anything, I know Current for rapid innovation. For instance, when Corona hit, they were the first ones to actually bring certain functionalities to life so that people could actually get the government fund that was being made available to every individual. So they're very much leading forward in my recollection of how Current operates. But then if I think about, let's say, bringing their proprietary core forward, which I know they made themselves, I'm not sure if they actually need that 80 million for that type of work, because with the right talent, just going to assume for a moment, 5 to 10 architects and AI engineers, you should be able to go very, very fast. Maybe they all make 1 million per head. I don't know, Dharmesh. Maybe we should try to interview for it.
Yeah.
Let's move to the final story. And that final story is about cyber attacks. And you're reading it more in the headlines as of late that um, also the supervisors are nudging the banks. And there's even a CEO letter circulating, I believe, in Europe from the supervisory body there that basically states, "Dear CEO, it's time to really pay attention to what these frontier labs are bringing to the table and how it impacts your daily operation, which is a systemic risk." Um, I think there's something there that will, I think, in the coming few weeks and months, get to a more crystallized, let's say, operating model.
Do you think this has been accentuated by the revelations from Mythos?
I think with Mythos, Anthropic just made it a, let's say, above the line conversation. I think the
Yeah.
conversation is just claimed by Anthropic. I think it's a great PR stunt to a degree. But also that model is indeed powerful and it will find more and more. And the next model will find even more. So I think they just claimed the conversation and made the statement. I think at this moment in time, the reality is maybe also landing on all the desks of all the supervisors, but also the C-suites, that if they do not move at all, or if they don't wake up to whatever is coming next, and they basically defend with the same type of firepower, they're going to be in a weak position. And what I think is interesting right now is that it's not a firm specific thing, like let's knock on every individual bank's door and try to work with them and eventually find an outcome. No, no, no. This is a systemic risk. That's how it's being flagged right now. So everyone needs to move. Everyone needs to be aware. And it's not a letter to the CTO, CIO. It's a letter to the CEO. So it's really it is a risk flag for the complete operation and not just in the tech division. I think that's interesting to what I'm reading so far in the past week.
I mean, it makes me wonder whether I mean, all of the technology underpinning the threat is moving at breakneck speed, right? And that's at compute speed, which is increasing on a yearly basis. Whereas human speed, which is, the people that are running the organization, is still way slower, right? And maybe at some point in the future that, elements of the board have to be AI agents themselves, right? Who knows? Because how else can you keep up to speed with the progress of technology and the way that it changes business?
You can't. You can't. I was in another conversation recently where, if you look at the past decade, it was this whole digital transformation movement. Of course,
Right.
there was cloud also tipping into it, and then mobile became more dominant. But in essence, the programs were pretty similar. They were just new channels or a little bit of a new infrastructure that was still delivering the same thing. What we're in the middle of right now is vastly different. And indeed, it's exponential, it's breakneck speed. There's no way this is going to slow down. So I'm with you. I think the typical board or the typical C-suite, myself included, there's a limit to what you can digest. So eventually, you either have to be AI native as a board and operate the whole organization with that intel and, let's say, insight all the time. Um, but eventually, for those that are not fully able to absorb it, their human capacity will be the limit. Will be the limit of what they can achieve, and hence their competitive dynamic will be limited to that, which I think is going to be it's going to be some interesting times, Dharmesh.
I think I think my role as a non-exec director on a few tech companies is probably up for challenge because if I look into the future, then the role of a non-exec is to play the honest broker between the management and the shareholders, right? And that's a job that can easily be done, I think, by an agent in the future much more effectively, and one that can, instead of having NEDs that um, mirror the CFO and mirror the sales director, mirror the CEO. That's how you get a balanced team across the board. You probably have one AI NED that can cover all of those roles, and keep them honest. So yeah, maybe my days are numbered.
Maybe they are. Same holds true for me. Dharmesh, thanks for being in the show again. Good to read through the highlights and insights and have a bit of a dialogue. Looking forward to the next one. Take care, everyone. Have a good week.